My girlfriend Marissa, 24F, and I, 26M, have been together for a little over 2 years, but her intense devotion to her close-knit friend group ultimately signaled the demise of our partnership. I'm definitively finished with the whole situation, and trying to recount this saga is overwhelming. I was deeply invested in my time with Marissa, having thought we were building something truly substantive. We took the significant step of moving in together 6 months ago, sharing all domestic responsibilities right down the middle, embracing a life of cohabitation. Yet recently I'd felt less like I was in a monogamous relationship and more like I was juggling a commitment to a half-dozen people. The core of the issue lies with Marissa's entourage: Chloe, Adrian, Tasha, and Finn. They actually call themselves the Squad without a hint of irony and are perpetually inseparable. Their group chats are a constant stream of messages, they coordinate elaborate matching costumes for holidays, they are a cohesive unit. Initially, I found her having such loyal companions to be endearing. Now, I frequently question if I was ever her boyfriend or merely a flatmate contributing to the rent. The breaking point was reached just last weekend. Our 2-year anniversary was imminent, and I had meticulously organized a special evening. I secured a table reservation at the restaurant where we'd shared our first legitimate date and procured concert tickets for an artist she'd been enthusiastically following. It wasn't extravagant, but it was deeply considered. I found her in the living room, completely absorbed in scrolling through social media stories documenting her friends' weekend excursions. "Listen, I've got a memorable night planned for our anniversary next Saturday," I announced, settling onto the sofa beside her. She reluctantly glanced up from her phone, and her expression was one of dismay, as if I'd just delivered devastating news. "Oh," she murmured, slowly setting the device down. "Oh, sweetheart, that night coincides with Tasha's pre-birthday celebration. You know I'm obligated to be there." I felt a sharp internal drop, but I consciously strove to remain composed. "Well, perhaps you could suggest to them that they postpone to Friday or Sunday?" Before I could even complete the sentence, she was already shaking her head. No, you don't grasp the severity. Tasha deliberately scheduled it for Saturday because it's genuinely the only evening everyone is available. Adrian has that major work convention starting Sunday. Chloe is under so much pressure with her new role, she genuinely requires this break. And Finn just broke up with his recent partner, so he needs our support right now too. I observed her features as she spoke. She was becoming increasingly spirited, as if her defense was gaining traction. "We all desperately need this evening, Ethan. The group hasn't been together properly in weeks." "But it's our anniversary," I countered, despising the feeble sound of my own voice. "This is a once-a-year occasion. You can see your friends literally any other time." That's when her entire demeanor transformed. She leaned back, crossed her arms, and gave me a look that implied I was being utterly irrational. "Love is patient, but friendship is non-negotiable. They were a part of my life before you arrived, and they will remain after you depart." I could only stare. Her words struck me with the force of a physical impact. "They'll be here after." Not in the hypothetical sense of if we ever part ways, but as a casual, foregone conclusion. It was as though our inevitable separation was already a scheduled event on her calendar, tucked between next month's group getaway and Chloe's next birthday. After all we had endeavored to construct together, I was apparently still just a temporary fixture that could be easily shifted to accommodate brunch plans. This pattern of deprioritization wasn't a novelty. For my master's graduation ceremony, she opted for Adrienne's housewarming party. At my brother's wedding last month, she was too utterly depleted from a 3-day squad festival to attend as my designated companion. Even when my mother was hospitalized for a serious surgical procedure, Marissa claimed the visit conflicted with their regular weekly game night. Yet she felt perfectly comfortable expecting me to abandon all personal commitments whenever she required assistance. Last month she summoned me at 2 a.m. to fetch her from a seedy bar across town because Finn was deemed incapable of operating a vehicle safely. Upon my arrival she barely gave me a nod of acknowledgement, instead continuing to pose for selfies with the others while I stood by like a hired chauffeur, then spent the entire drive home relaying the latest petty drama between Chloe and some man from the bar. The most cutting aspect is how she characterized our relationship to them. I recently overheard her on the phone with Tasha, claiming I was experiencing a jealous spell and needed to learn to better share her time. It paints me as an insecure adolescent instead of her dedicated partner who simply desires to feel like a central focus occasionally. I have repeatedly attempted to discuss the need for equilibrium, emphasizing that a committed relationship also necessitates tender care and attention. She invariably makes vows to improve, only to instantly draft new plans that intentionally exclude me. When I highlight this repeating cycle, her response is to accuse me of attempting to socially isolate her from her friends. It is a no-win scenario. I am drafting this message from a local coffee establishment because I found being in our shared apartment utterly intolerable. I have spent the entire morning browsing property listings online. I located a suitable one-bedroom flat approximately 20 minutes away that I can sustainably afford on my own. The rental application is currently awaiting submission in my email drafts. I do genuinely love her, but I cannot continue to accept 6th place in my own romantic partnership. My friends are of the opinion that I should deliver an ultimatum, but honestly, I am exhausted by the prospect of pleading with someone to invest time in me. Is it truly an excessive demand that your girlfriend occasionally wishes to be your actual partner? Edit, confirmation of priorities. The volume of insightful responses has been genuinely illuminating. To everyone questioning why I haven't simply terminated the relationship, you are absolutely correct. I kept holding on to the hope that she would ultimately recognize the impact of her behavior, but she has made her true priorities abundantly clear. I will be submitting that rental application as soon as I return home. Update 1, the quiet departure. The initial post unexpectedly garnered a huge reaction. Thank you for the outpouring of encouragement and sound advice. I wish I could relay a positive conclusion where we reconciled, but the following events will clarify the outcome. I officially submitted the apartment application that same day. Receiving approval within 48 hours felt like a sign of confirmation. I spent the next 7 days discreetly transferring my possessions whenever Marissa was out with the squad, which was conveniently almost a daily occurrence. By the time she registered that something was amiss, I had already relocated roughly 80% of my belongings. She returned home late Thursday night, close to midnight. Apparently, they'd been to a new rooftop lounge Finn wanted to try, and she instantly noticed my missing gaming equipment. I heard her calling my name from the living area, her voice growing increasingly frazzled with each room she checked. Ethan, what in the world is going on here? Where is all your stuff? I was in our bedroom packing the final items of my clothing when she located me. She paused in the doorway for a moment, scrutinizing the space as if taking an inventory of the absent items. Are you actually moving out? Her voice held a slight tremor on the final words. I silently extended the letter I had drafted. I attempted to keep the message uncomplicated and truthful. I explained that I needed to be with a woman who was willing to truly prioritize our bond, and that I could no longer endure feeling like an afterthought in her existence. She read it once, quickly, then again more deliberately, her eyes widening in disbelief. When she finally looked up at me, it was as if she was staring at a total stranger. You are honestly abandoning me because I have friends? Because I won't forsake the people who have been a constant support for me for years. I sank onto the edge of the bed, feeling suddenly drained. Marissa, this is not about you having a social circle. Then what is this truly about? She snapped, brandishing the letter. Because this whole thing reads like you're demanding I choose between you and everyone I hold dear. I want you to value me too, I said in a low voice. I want to feel like I hold significance for you, like our relationship has weight. She gazed at me as if I had proposed something utterly absurd. Of course you matter, but I cannot just desert my friends every single time you want some attention. I felt a wrenching sensation in my chest. Marissa, I requested you spend one evening with me for our anniversary, one night. And you clarified why that particular night was more important than what we share. She threw her hands up in exasperation. This is ridiculous, Ethan. You're throwing away 2 years of commitment because you can't tolerate me having a social life. You were aware of who I was when we began dating. I looked at her, truly observed her, and realized she was fundamentally incapable of understanding. In her frame of reference, I was the source of the problem. I was the one behaving unreasonably. I believed I knew who you were, I said, rising and closing the zipper on my bag. I thought you were someone who desired to construct a life with me. I do want to build something with you, but not if the condition is severing ties with everyone else in my life. I'm not asking you to cut them off. I'm asking you to allocate room for me too. But she was already shaking her head, and I could plainly see in her expression that we were doomed to continue in this unproductive loop. She interpreted my actions as controlling behavior. I saw them as fundamental relationship maintenance. There was no common ground either of us was willing to seek out. After another 20 minutes of the same arguments being endlessly repeated, I finally held up my hands. I am done, Marissa. I'm finished arguing about this subject. Done arguing or done with us? Both. The finality of my voice seemed to finally register with her. Her entire posture deflated as she grasped that this was not simply another disagreement we would eventually navigate past. That's when the situation became distinctly peculiar. She began following me around the apartment, reciting a list of everything we had shared, all the memories we had accumulated. But even then, every second sentence was a reference to her friends. Do you recall that concert where we unexpectedly bumped into Chloe and Adrian? What about the evening we prepared a dinner for the entire squad? It was as if she could not even conceive of experiences that were exclusively ours. I informed her that I would return for the remaining items over the weekend while she was at Tasha's pool party, because naturally there was a pool party. I left my key on the kitchen counter and departed. However, simply leaving was insufficient for her. On Saturday morning, I was in my new apartment, finally feeling a sense of tranquility, when my phone began to vibrate incessantly. Marissa was calling relentlessly, sending exceptionally long text messages about how we needed to talk this through like mature adults. When I declined to answer, she began having the squad relay messages to me as well. Chloe sent me a lengthy message about how devastated Marissa was and that I was dismantling the family. Finn labeled me immature for ghosting instead of attempting to work things out. Adrian attempted a rational approach, proposing that we all convene to discuss the matter. Even Tasha, with whom I'd probably exchanged no more than 10 sentences over 2 years, felt entitled to lecture me on my error. The messages became increasingly hostile throughout the day. Things like, "You're going to regret this and Marissa deserves someone better anyway." By Sunday evening, they were branding me emotionally abusive for abandoning her without warning, despite the explanatory letter I had left. Then Monday night arrived. I returned home from work to find all 5 of them standing directly outside my new building. Marissa was positioned at the front, with the squad arrayed behind her like an intervention team. She started speaking the instant she saw me, her voice loud enough that neighbors were peering out of their windows. "We need to resolve this immediately. You don't get to simply vanish and ignore everyone. We are all adults here." I told them there was nothing left to resolve. I had made my ultimate decision. I had explained my rationale and I was not going to change my mind. That's when Finn stepped forward with this gem of a statement. "Dude, you're being a selfish piece of. Do you have any idea how much you're hurting her? How much you're hurting all of us?" "All of them?" I inquired what exactly I had done to inflict pain on people I barely knew. Apparently, by engaging in a relationship with Marissa, I had become an integrated component of their family system, and leaving her was akin to abandoning all of them. You can only imagine the expression I made while listening to this utterly codependent drivel. It was the most unrealistic nonsense I had ever heard. The entire scene was bizarre. Chloe was weeping. Adrian persistently attempted to mediate. Tasha was recording the entire interaction on her phone for evidence, of what I have no idea. And Marissa simply stood there, nodding along, as if this were perfectly acceptable behavior. I informed them that they had precisely 30 seconds to vacate my property before I contacted building security. When they remained stationary and continued to instruct me to work things out like an adult, I walked inside and did exactly that. Security emerged and requested their departure, which they ultimately complied with, but not before Marissa screamed a declaration that this wasn't over. That was 3 weeks ago. The persistent calls and text messages have finally ceased, but I still occasionally receive a random message from an unfamiliar number, probably one of them using an alternate phone. I doubt they will attempt to trespass at my building again. The building management is now aware and on alert for them. I do not regret leaving, but I am genuinely astonished by the level of absurdity this reached. Seriously, who enlists their entire group of friends to harass an ex-partner? What kind of adult conduct is that? Update 2, the squad's unraveling. I'm back with another development. Frankly, I didn't anticipate having more to share on this situation, but life, it seems, possesses a wicked sense of humor. Firstly, things on my side are flourishing. The new apartment is excellent. Work has been demanding but fulfilling, and I've been actively reconnecting with old friends I'd somewhat neglected during the Marissa era. It turns out that when you aren't spending every weekend as the designated driver for someone else's social calendar, you actually have time for your own meaningful connections. Who would have thought? But the truly compelling narrative is the recent evolution within Marissa and the infamous squad. My friend Jake works with Adrian, and apparently the group dynamic is drastically changing. Remember my mention that Adrian was getting serious with his girlfriend Emma? Well, they became engaged 2 weeks ago. Emma has been quite outspoken about her view that the entire group setup is emotionally immature and has been strongly encouraging Adrian to establish better boundaries. According to Jake, Adrian has been gradually detaching himself from the relentless group activities, missing the weekly gatherings, responding less frequently to the group chat, and actually prioritizing his engagement. Sound familiar? Marissa apparently completely lost her composure when Adrian stated he couldn't attend their annual weekend trip to the beach house because he and Emma had already scheduled a visit to her parents. "You're becoming exactly like Ethan," were reportedly her precise words. Heaven forbid someone elevate their romantic commitment above a weekend beach trip. But it gets even better. Chloe received a promotion at her job that necessitates a move to Portland. She's been attempting to coordinate virtual hangouts and plan visits, but Marissa has been frosty about the whole thing. She allegedly made a comment about how real friends don't abandon the group for career opportunities. Chloe is, understandably, hurt by this reaction to what should be celebratory news. Then there is the Tasha and Finn situation. I never received the full details while dating Marissa, but apparently those two have been involved in an intermittent secret fling for years that everyone simply chose to ignore. Well, it's back on, but this time it is serious enough that they want to formally date instead of just secretly hooking up after group events. Marissa is not coping well with this development because it alters the group's structure and she's apprehensive about the consequences if they separate. So let me clarify. When I voiced complaints about feeling neglected, I was controlling and self-centered. But now, when she experiences the same neglect from her friends, it's instantly a tragedy and everyone is abandoning her. The most ironic part, and I'm hearing this via Jake's girlfriend who is friends with Emma, is that Marissa has been telling people that everyone is pulling an Ethan on her. Like somehow the desire to mature and cultivate adult relationships is a sort of betrayal epidemic that I started. I seriously doubt anyone is taking her seriously anymore. Meanwhile, I've been having genuine fun for the first time in months. I attended a concert last weekend with some university friends I hadn't seen in ages. No elaborate group coordination was necessary. No one insisted on taking social media photos every 5 minutes. And I didn't have to leave prematurely because someone needed emotional reassurance regarding their latest personal drama. It was revolutionary. I've also started seeing a new woman. Nothing serious yet, but Sarah is a refreshing change. She has close friends, but she also comprehends that relationships necessitate dedicated one-on-one time to flourish. A groundbreaking concept, right? We had a lovely dinner on Friday night, just the two of us, and she never once checked her phone. It didn't even strike me as unusual until much later. But here is where things become truly compelling. 3 days ago, I received a text message from Marissa. The first direct communication since the building confrontation. Hey, I know things ended badly between us, but I've been doing a lot of thinking. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime. I feel like we both said things we didn't mean. What on earth? I just sat there, staring at my phone for a full minute. After months of complete silence, this out-of-the-blue approach. It felt like being blindsided. I didn't respond immediately, but then yesterday she sent another one. I know I made mistakes. I was young and didn't understand how to balance everything, but I've been learning and growing, and I think we could try again if you're open to it. I showed the messages to Jake and he just laughed. Apparently, the news has circulated back to Marissa that I've been thriving, that I'm dating someone new, and that I appear authentically happier. Jake believes she is realizing that perhaps having a committed boyfriend wasn't such a terrible inconvenience after all. The timing is incredibly telling, though, right when her friend group is organically changing and she is facing the reality that people grow up and their priorities shift. Suddenly, she wants to revisit our past relationship. Where was all this learning and growing when I was begging her to acknowledge my feelings for 2 solid years? I am not responding to the messages. I don't owe her a coffee meeting or a chance to explain herself. I devoted 2 years of effort attempting to get her to understand what I required from a partnership, and she consistently chose to disregard those needs. I am not interested in serving as her fallback plan now that her primary social foundation is experiencing upheaval. Edit, authenticity versus convenience. A few people have asked if I believe she has genuinely changed or if this is merely a matter of convenience. Honestly, it is irrelevant. Even if she has learned a valuable lesson about relationships, I have moved forward. I am building a new life with a person who already comprehends what true partnership entails. Why would I choose to regress? Final update, closure at last. This will likely be my final entry regarding this whole situation, but I wanted to provide the conclusion of events since so many of you have followed along. The persistent text messages from Marissa continued for approximately another week after my last update. They weren't aggressive or manipulative, but rather an attempt to find the perfect combination of words that would compel me to reply. A few notable excerpts. I finally understand what you meant about balance. I see it now. The group isn't the same anymore. I think I was using everyone to avoid dealing with real intimacy. I miss talking to you, not even about getting back together, just talking. That last message almost managed to sway me. We did, in fact, share excellent conversations, especially during the early stages of our relationship. But I reminded myself that good conversation does not automatically equate to good partnership, and I maintained my silence. Things reached a definitive conclusion last Tuesday. Sarah and I were having dinner at a popular Italian restaurant downtown when I noticed a familiar cluster at a corner table: Marissa, Finn, and Tasha. Adrian and Chloe were conspicuously absent. Apparently, Adrian was at a couple's event with his fiancée, and Chloe was already in Portland, establishing her new life. Marissa saw me before I could suggest a discreet exit. Our eyes met across the dining room, and I could see her hesitating about whether to approach. Sarah noticed my sudden tension and inquired if everything was okay. I provided a brief explanation of the history. She knew I had an ex who had been reaching out, but not the full extent of the drama. To her credit, Marissa did not create a scene. She simply offered a small, subdued wave, then seemed to return to an animated discussion with Finn and Tasha. I assumed that was the end of the interaction. However, as Sarah and I were departing, Marissa intercepted us near the exit. Ethan. Hey, I truly don't want to disrupt your evening, but could I speak to you for just 1 minute? Sarah gently squeezed my hand and said she would wait by the car. Probably the most composed and gracious way anyone has ever handled meeting their partner's ex. Marissa looked noticeably different. Perhaps tired or just older. She began speaking quickly as if she had rehearsed the exact script. I know you haven't been responding to my messages and I completely understand why. I just wanted to tell you that you were right about everything. About the balance, about priorities, about what a real relationship should look like. I see Adrian with Emma and I watch how they support each other, and I realize I never did that for you. I told her I appreciated her admission, but that it did not alter anything between us. I know. I'm not requesting another opportunity. I just needed you to be aware that I finally comprehend. And I'm sorry, truly and genuinely sorry, for how I treated you and for how I reacted when you chose to leave. It was the first time she had apologized without any qualifiers or mitigating excuses. She glanced toward Sarah in the parking lot and offered a sad smile. She seems lovely. I sincerely hope she appreciates what she has. And that was it. She returned to her table. I walked to my car and Sarah asked if I was okay. I realized I actually was fine. The ironic postscript to all this, I heard through Jake that the squad is essentially finished. Adrian is fully committed to his new life with Emma and barely communicates with the group anymore. Chloe is thriving in Portland and has formed new friendships through her work. Tasha and Finn are formally dating now, but apparently desire distance from the group dynamic that complicated their own connection for so long. Marissa has been trying to keep the group intact, planning events and sending nostalgic messages about past good times. But you cannot force people to remain in a dynamic they have outgrown. She is learning the very lesson I attempted to teach her months ago, that all relationships, regardless of type, demand mutual investment and understanding. When people feel they cannot be authentic or pursue their personal development, they will depart. As for Sarah and me, things are progressing beautifully. She met some of my friends last weekend and it was completely effortless. No one felt they had to perform or compete for attention. Just mature adults socializing and getting to know one another. She has been discussing the possibility of taking a weekend getaway next month, just the two of us. The fact that this sounds normal and exciting rather than selfish or threatening tells me everything I need to know about the distinction between healthy and unhealthy relationship dynamics. I don't harbor any ill will toward Marissa. I sincerely hope she figures out how to build connections that don't require her to sacrifice other essential relationships. But I am profoundly glad I had the courage to walk away when I did. Sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is to refuse to tolerate being treated as a secondary option. Thank you for all the support throughout this entire ordeal, Reddit. It's time to permanently close this chapter and concentrate on the new one.